Right to be Read podcast, episode number 105, interview with Crystal Earle.
Hey authors, wish you could just write books and forget about all this marketing and coordinating with freelancers and formatting and proofreading and stuff? You're not alone. It's every artist's dream to just be able to create art while turning over the whole business and marketing side to someone who really loves and is really great at doing just that. If you're ready to start treating your writing like a business and get an experienced publishing and marketing team behind your words, pay a visit to Archangel Inc. Archangel Inc. does absolutely everything needed to take a manuscript and turn it into a finished product ready to sell in all markets and multiple formats, from cover design to audiobook and everything in between. And as an Archangel Inc. client, you'll be able to promote your book through Buck Books, the world's fastest growing book promotion website, at no extra charge. To find out more, go to www.archangelinc.com. That's archangelinc.com.
You are listening to the Right to be Read podcast, and this is your host, Ani Alexander.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Right to be Read podcast. It's me again, Ani Alexander, and as always today again with yet another interview, I will try to inspire and encourage you. Today I have a special guest. She's one of the people I met online just a few weeks ago, and I'm going to follow from now on. We kind of clicked when we met online, and I decided that she can bring value to the podcast and tell very important things and share her message, which I think that you need to hear too. So today I'm going to talk to Crystal Earle, and she is a speaker, entrepreneur, passionate author, and transformational coach. We all tell stories to ourselves and the world about who we are and what we are here to create. Crystal works with people who want to understand how to take their unique story, voice, passion, and purpose into the world in a way that resonates and connects with who they are and the audience they want to reach. So basically, we will be talking today about how the stories we tell ourselves shape our future events in our life. So let's go ahead and start the interview now. Okay, I'm really happy we had this conversation before with Crystal, and I know her a bit, in a more informal sort of chat. And today we will try to be as formal as we can, although, none of my interviews have been formal up to now. So Crystal, welcome to the show. I'm really happy to have you over.
Thank you, Annie. It is so great to be here today.
Yeah, well, I'm I was inspired with your personal story, and I think we will dive into that so our listeners get inspired too. So let's kind of start from the beginning and, portion by portion, let the listeners know what was happening. And because I think it's a really great story. Besides being a personal story, it's also a really great story of becoming a writer. So let's just dive into you starting writing. How did that happen? And how did you eventually decide to write your very first book?
Well, to kind of put some context around it, I live between Toronto and the north coast of Dominican Republic in the Caribbean. And the reason I do is because I am originally the co-founder of a charity, an international humanitarian charity. And in 2009, after I'd met the girl that is now my daughter, but in one of the communities that I worked in here in Dominican Republic, hosting teams, and we were working with Haitian families in this community, I found out that this little girl's mother had just died suddenly, and she was orphaned. And so it put me on this quest and this search at that time with my then husband we just decided we wanted to look into adoption. And to begin to try to find her. And a few months later, through a really amazing serendipitous series of events, I found her in the village where I'd last seen her. I found someone who knew her, and they took me to her grandmother. And within 5 minutes, I was sitting in this woman's home, this Haitian woman's home. And I'd brought a translator, and I'm staring at this woman, and all I have to show this woman is just this picture of me holding her granddaughter from a year and a half ago when her birth mother was alive. And I looked at this woman, and through the translator, I said to her, I know that we don't really know each other. You've seen me here working in the village. I said, but I really feel that I would love to be able to have the chance to raise your granddaughter. I know that it's very difficult for you, and you are having a hard time doing that. And if you'd be willing to let me, I would love to pursue adopting her and raising her and bringing her to Canada with me. And the grandma didn't say anything. She just stared at the ground for a second, and, talking about the stories we tell ourselves. As the grandma's staring at the ground, I'm thinking, oh, Crystal, you idiot. What are you thinking? You just insulted this woman. And, and all of a sudden she said something in Haitian, and she had tears in her eyes, and she looked at my translator and said it. And the translator stopped, and he paused. And then he turned to me and he said, she said that would be a good thing, because if she goes with you to Canada, she won't die. And that is honestly how my whole adoption journey started. And within the next month and a bit, we had started the process working with the family. And the Canadian government at the time, we were going to do an emergency visa. And my daughter had been sent to Haiti, and we worked with everybody to get all the proper paperwork, and we were going to be bringing her back to Canada. And things got held off. And so in December, I was in Haiti getting things ready, and went back to Canada. I had custody of my daughter at the time, and I had to go back to Canada because I'm also a professional speaker. And I had to do a speaking tour in Denmark for a couple weeks. And so I was just getting ready. I was going to be going back to get my daughter. And I'm in Denmark. I'm on this 2-week tour, and I'm sitting in a Turkish shawarma shop in Copenhagen, Denmark.
Wow.
And I'm eating a shawarma, and I'm looking up at the TV, and going by on the TV is this news flash, and I can't read anything because it's all in Danish, except I could see the 2 words, earthquake in Haiti. And I just stopped, and I knew that my life had just changed, and that changed everything. So everything that we'd signed, even the judge that we were about to work with, everybody in Haiti that we'd finished everything with, everything was destroyed and lost. And we were left to start all over again. And so I came to Dominican Republic thinking I was just going to get her for a couple weeks, and we would be, emergency transported out of Dominican as they were starting to help all these other families bring their kids out. But ours wasn't far enough in process, and we were left behind. And so when I came here in the end of January of 2010, I thought I was going to be here for 2 weeks. And I'm currently doing this interview right now in my living room on the north coast of Dominican Republic. Wow. And and it just began this series of events in my life. And within a year, everything had changed in my life. And I ended up being separating from my husband, and things just started to change rapidly in my life. And I just had to make some decisions about how I was going to choose the story from that point forward. And so my writing began as I had started blogging, as I'm sure a lot of people that even listening to this podcast, I had to figure out a way to just start processing all of this stuff. And I started blogging about my life here and and I'm very extroverted. So it became a way that I could reach out to people around me. And I began to get some feedback on the blogs, and people began to share them. And then in the background, I started to write down the story of where I'd come from. And that just began to inspire me to pursue taking that and it's not making a memoir, but extracting from that not only the lessons that I learned, but the common things that I could share with other people. Mm. And oftentimes when we sit down to write a book, and you can probably say this too, whatever our original idea or vision for the book or any project that we do, it morphs and it changes with us as we change. And that's what happened with the book. And so over the course of the last year and a half, I did a crowdfunding campaign for my book and raised the money to publish it, and it came out last fall. But the whole idea and around it is, and around my life, is around how we choose the stories that we tell ourselves. Seth Godin once said, we're always telling stories, but the most powerful stories that we will ever tell are the ones we tell ourselves about who we are. And, and about what we're capable of creating in the world. And that's been my personal journey, has been recognizing that there have been a lot of stories about myself that are not, that I've been choosing to believe, and I've been navigating my life around them as if they were real, but they're not. They're just they're just a leftover memory of something that I've allowed to resonate inside of me. And I've allowed it to become something bigger than it needs to be. And so changing that has completely transformed my life.
So can you tell that somehow when you started writing, it had, in a way, therapeutic effect on you, and it was like a therapy, and it helped you cope with the reality and maybe also discover things about you and your life?
Oh, yeah, completely. So as a result, my daughter's never been able to leave Dominican, and so I commute back and forth between Toronto and here. She stays here. And so what writing for me started something that I would do on the plane to kind of, I wanted to collect my thoughts. And then it became a daily, I started educating myself around the power of the daily writing habit itself. Julia Cameron, in her book, The Artist's Way, talks about the morning pages and the practice of just beginning to write. And I see it like, I always picture my morning writing is like a pail of milk when it's freshly milked from a cow. There's like cream, the cream rises to the top, and you can just scoop that off. And that's how I see my morning writing, is like, sometimes it's like, wow, it's so inspired. Other times it's like, whoa, that's ugly, or that's really,
Yeah.
what was I thinking? Was I even awake when I wrote that? But it's like, I'm just kind of, shifting off the fuzz off the top of my head to begin to think clearly. And so that's how my writing began to become a practice. And I began to set goals for myself. And at first I wasn't disciplined, and a lot of people, I told myself, oh man, I'm not disciplined enough. I'm very extroverted and I like to be spontaneous. And I read a quote one time from an author that said, people ask me when I write, and I say that I write whenever I'm inspired, and I decide that I will be inspired every morning at 9 a.m.
Yeah.
So I just decided, you know what, Crystal, I told myself, if you really want to be a writer, and if you really want to do something with this, and you say that these books and these ideas, and there's something inside of that you want to bring to the world, then you have to treat that with the respect that it deserves. And you have to treat it with the dignity that it deserves to have the space in your life to be able to explore. And doing that changed everything. Because it changed how I saw my writing. It changed my passion to become a better writer. But it also changed how writing in the beginning became about what I wanted to write about, and it made me more observant about what I now recognize other people will connect with, and how I can best honor where I've come from, and best honor the opportunity that people, when people pick up your books or your articles or whatever, they're giving you an incredible gift. They're giving you their attention. And that's not something to be taken lightly. That's an honor and a privilege to be able to have their attention for a good time or a long time, however long it is. And so I want to show up when I'm bringing something to them. I want to show up with the best that's going to serve them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I see. And I'm always kind of curious about this, because I've never collected really a courage to kind of write about my personal life and, what I've been going through. I mean, both of my novels are based on true stories, but they're like the true stories of other people's lives, not mine.
Right.
So I was just wondering, I mean, how easy it is, or how liberating it is, or how scary it is to actually kind of sit down and write about your personal life and kind of share it with so many people you've never seen and you've never known, and to kind of, put yourself in this vulnerable situation where these people can read and kind of evaluate and kind of judge what you've written. Were you scared about this or not?
Yes to all the above. Yes, no, and everything. I was at first, because, and that's the beautiful thing about writing is, you go back and you write, and we call it, in my writers group, we call it vomit onto the page.
Yeah.
You just get it out there. And then you go back and you read it with a fresh set of eyes again. And you come back again, you edit it, and you work through. And having, for me, there's been a couple things that were really great for that, is that I had people that were reading it as I was going along. I'm in a writer's group, which is really super healthy. But I had friends that I felt could give me honest feedback and weren't worried about how I would receive it. And so I would send them chapters at a time and say, does this, how do you, what do you think of this? Is there anything that you would add to this or anything? And one of the things that I've come to realize, and I just wrote a blog about this yesterday, is there's a really big difference between being authentic and being sensationalized. And I think we can lose the impact of what true authenticity is, because we can think, we live in a culture that's all about reality TV, and I just want to be real about things. And I know there's a place and a time for those things, but when you're writing to share with other people, because you're coming from a place where you really want to help them, authenticity says, it's not about being sensationalized, and it's not about focusing on all the bad things. It's about saying, this is where I came from. And this is really how I felt. This is where I was at. But this is what I found through that. And I heard a speaker one time say in some speaking training that I was doing, he said that if you become so specific about how you felt and what you experienced in that moment, the message becomes universal for those around you. And that's how I've begun to approach. That's how I approached my writing. And so when I wrote the book, I got very specific. Because there's a lot of really delicate and tender details about my life, as there are a lot of people. And I didn't want to cast anybody in a bad light. I wasn't trying to betray anybody's confidence. I chose to give insights into how I felt, and I made it always about the things that I took away from it. And I didn't want to dwell in all the for lack of a better term, all the bad things, because we all go through those things. Those are common to our human experience. But it's what we choose to do with it and how we choose to change those stories that makes us the people that we are and puts us in a different place. And that was always my goal with this book. So, however, when the book came out, I remember thinking, okay, now everything's on it went live. I also have print copies of my book. And I remember the day that the box showed up at the door of my apartment and in Toronto, and I was like, I opened up the box and I'm holding the book. I'm like, okay, well, this is there's no going back from this. But I felt good because I felt like I'd honored the people in the story. I'd honored myself, and I was true to my experience without sensationalizing anything. And that was very liberating and freeing, because I felt like I really did have something now to give back to the world because of what I'd come through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I see. So I just realized, funny, but this happens with me sometimes. I realized that we never mentioned the title of your book.
It's called Resonate, the Stories We Tell Ourselves.
Okay. So, you think that the stories we tell ourselves kind of shape our upcoming events and our behavior and stuff like that. So eventually we are able to come up with new stories and change things.
Mm-hmm. In coaching, one of the concepts that we talk about a lot is accepting and creating. And we can tend to think that if we accept, we can see accepting something as almost admitting defeat. Yeah. That I accept that, it could be anything. I accept that I went through a traumatic experience in my life, or I accept that I had this major disappointment. Mm-hmm. And we can think that, okay, I accept it, But the reality is that accepting it is true acceptance with what we've come through, and is actually recognizing that it is where it is, or I am where I'm at, but I create something from this point forward. I choose. I may not have realized the power that I had in the past to make that decision, but from the moment that I recognize it and embrace it and accept that I hold the power to decide what I'm going to believe about myself and what I'm capable of creating, when I take hold of that power, that's the minute that I begin to change that story. And it's not an overnight thing. I really don't think that, we can't change the past. We really can't change how the emotions or the feelings that will still continue to assault us in the days ahead. Like there are going to be days when all of us will question whether we're good enough to do something, or whether we can be brave enough to try it, or whether we have what it takes. But recognizing and asking ourselves a couple key questions changes those things. So the first thing that I always tell people, and when I'm working with my coaching clients even, is if they'll say something like, I could never do that. And one of the examples I always use is, people say, I could never be a speaker. I could never stand up on a stage and speak in front of people. And I'll say, is that true? Mm-hmm. Well, and then they'll say, well, I don't think I could. Okay, is that really true? And drilling down and asking ourselves, because there are so many things that we take at face value because we've just become so accustomed to navigating around those thoughts and feelings in our lives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I liken it to in my apartment. I have you have your bedroom. In particular, your bedroom furniture usually stays the same. And at nighttime, or if you're walking around in that room and it's dark and you can't see anything, you automatically, instinctively, even though you may not realize it, often you will know how many steps it is from one spot in there to another spot in the room, and
true.
you'll know when I get to this spot, I gotta turn left here because then I'll bang into the bed, and or whatever.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We navigate around things because we just take those as at face value. And what happens in our lives and how we see ourselves is when we hang on to things that are not serving us, we begin to navigate our lives around them, unknowingly often, but we accommodate those things. So if we are scared of trying something new, we actually accommodate that fear rather than challenging it. And we just continually, like that bedroom in the dark, we navigate around it, and we try to find ways around it to allow that fear to still exist. By changing the story, we face the fact that, hey, you know what? I'm scared of doing that. That actually, I have to be honest and say I'm scared of it. There's nothing wrong with acknowledging that you're scared of something, or that you're questioning whether you can or not. There is absolutely nothing wrong with doing that. But it's what you choose to do with that changes everything.
Okay, so can we kind of get a bit practical and take a real life example and try to see how we can kind of, retell the story and, make another story that we tell ourselves and change where we are, which is a place we don't really like to be. So let's say, I'm going back like to my teenage years because I shared my first writing experiences with my audience, and they kind of resonated with that. And back then, although I was writing already, I never thought of myself as a writer. I never thought that my writing was any good, so I wasn't even considering sharing it with others. And I thought that it couldn't be anything more than just a hobby. So I wasn't really serious about writing, because I thought that it's just, something teenagers do. They just scrabble and, they take things out of their chest, and then, later on at some point they lose these papers. I didn't even have a computer back then, I'm quite old. So, but anyway, so, this self-doubt and all these stories I told myself as being, not really a writer and not writing good enough and, not being serious about writing, it kind of didn't let me even seriously anyway at some point even consider that I might, for example, at university study something related to creative writing or whatever it is. I mean, I didn't even reach the stage when I thought that maybe this is something I would like to pursue in the future. So at the end, I ended up studying business, majoring finance, and, going to a completely different direction. Right. So let's say, I have many listeners who I know that have all these doubts, and they too are not really sure that, they could become a writer, and they are not really sure about their writing so much that they are even too scared to share it with anyone else but themselves.
Right.
So they end up being their only reader. And that's kind of the stories they are telling, like these negative stories of them being bad writers.
Right.
Although, they are passionate so much about writing that they go on and write on regular basis, and they have this urge and need and passion to do so. So let's kind of try to tell the right stories and to let them kind of explain them what could be done and what could be changed.
Okay. So let's use that, using that example, let's say that you are someone that is, you've been writing maybe for the last couple of years, you've got either files or notebooks or whatever stashed away of things, and you're listening right now and you're thinking, I wonder, that's great. And probably, truthfully, if you are that person, you're listening, but then there's something that's coming up in the back of your mind and saying, that's great, but you don't understand where I've come from. You don't understand the challenges, or you don't, that's easy for you to say because. Mm-hmm. And already those are things that we can begin to have a beginner's mindset. One of the best things that we can do for ourselves is to, as cheesy as it sounds, is to be kind to ourselves. And what I mean when I say that is to lift judgment off ourselves. And instead of saying, why am I so negative? Or why can't I get my stuff, my crap together? Or instead of saying, like with a beginner's mindset, isn't it interesting that I have a hard time embracing the fact that I'm a writer? Isn't it interesting? Because, if we think those thoughts and we think those judgments because we're attached to everything, because we know all the background of it. And so we're so connected and we've so tightly woven our present with our past that we think that they're all interconnected. They're not. So, and to put that into more practical terms, when we say, isn't that interesting? Because if I was to hear you say that and I'm sitting outside of you and I'm completely unattached and I'm objective to what you're saying, and if I hear that someone's writing and they've put all this work and they're scared to show anybody, I would be like, that doesn't change the fact that you're still a writer. Right? You're a writer.
Writer's right.
You're a writer.
Yeah.
Writer's right. That's right. That's exactly, that's a beautiful way to put it. I think there's a hashtag that people use a lot that I see, I'm a writer, right? I am a writer. I'm a writer. I identify with it. And that, part of that is what we'd say, in the whole idea behind affirmations and the words that we use around everything. By just embracing it. And, sometimes we have to just, even if all we have to do is like close the bathroom door and whisper it to ourselves, I'm a writer. Like what is one thing you can do today? If you're listening to this right now, what is one thing that you can do today to embrace that? Is it that you need to write a note to yourself and say, I'm a writer? Sometimes I email myself the night before if I think, in case you have a bad day today, and I remind myself of all the reasons that I'm going to be okay. I have all these little life hacks of getting around my own stories.
Well, actually, what they can do is they can email me or you, actually,
Perfect.
just saying that they are writers or
yes, I would love that.
Or share their
brilliant.
Challenges and struggles. Why not? I mean, let's share. I mean, my email is annie@anniealexander.com and Crystal's is
crystal@yourbrillianceunlimited.com. And CHRISTAL, by the way.
Okay.
At yourbrillianceunlimited.com. I would love that, and really, what is it that we're so scared of? So I once heard Danielle Laporte say, fear is just one of many emotions. Isn't that a funny thing? We think it's so much bigger than it is, but any emotion we feel, any thoughts that we feel, they only have their power because we give them. Really, emotions are, they're actually like parasitic in nature. They need a host to survive. They're just a passing thing. Fear doesn't exist without the power that we give it. Mm-hmm. So exactly. when we fear embracing who we are, who we want to be, we can tend to think that that's beyond our control. But it starts with, and this is what I work with a lot of people when I'm coaching them. It starts with understanding the assumptions you've made, the beliefs that you've held onto, and the beginning and the steps that you can take consistently every day to begin to change those. And if all that someone has the courage to do is to take one step a day, then it's one step they're taking towards changing that story. Mm-hmm. and it's lifting, and celebrating that step, if for you, because you're writing, but you've been scared to share it, for you, starting a Tumblr blog and popping your writing up there might be something that you can do. Say, today, I can celebrate the fact that I took this step. Maybe it's, finally saying, going live on Facebook or Twitter, and saying, I've started a blog and this is where you can find my writing at. I would love to hear your thoughts. It's, we're so scared because we think that with writing or anything of it's kind of like the paradox of being a creative is we become so attached to what we create that we forget that we are not what we create. It comes from inside of us, but it's not us. Our worth doesn't. It exists apart. We're valuable and we're worthy simply because we're here. What we choose to create, if we can recognize it as it's something we create and it's for the world, whether the world chooses to embrace it or not, if we've done our part in creating, we have done the part that we needed to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we can celebrate that.
Yeah, exactly. So, if you are scared and if you don't want to share it with anyone else, just, send us an email and we'll make sure that we cheer you up and help you out. And, you'll be one step closer to the story you want to tell yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so let's say, I just, want to go back briefly. And you said that you crowdfunded your book. Mm-hmm.
I did.
And that's what kind of, financed the publishing of it. Mm-hmm. So basically, did you already have an audience in place? Did you already have a platform which kind of backed you up? Or if you didn't, how did you manage to get to your goal?
Yeah, crowdfunding is an interesting thing because it was like, and going back to the, changing the story, it was kind of the first step that I embraced the thought that, I didn't want to ask people for money. It felt like a weird thing because I just finished, I'd started our charity in 2000 and I just finished up and I resigned from the charity. And now here I was doing a crowdfunding campaign. It seems so funny. But what I did was I leveraged my friends. And when I say leverage, I don't mean use them. I mean, I shared with them the story behind the book and why I wanted to do it. In the end, I never reached the goal that I'd set out, but that's because that was actually okay. I mean, I raised a significant amount of money that did cover all the costs of publishing. Mm-hmm. And I learned so much through it. And I think I can actually share the link with you for this podcast if people want to go back and see what I did for the crowdfunding campaign.
Sure.
If they want to have some ideas. And there are lots of ideas. I used Indiegogo. Indiegogo was great. Their support was awesome. And there are a lot of authors in particular that do use Indiegogo for projects. One of the things with crowdfunding to remember is you want people will support you in crowdfunding, especially as being an author or creative. It's different if we're like, creating, I don't know, like sunglasses or something. And that's a little different. It's a product that people can buy. But when you're doing a crowdfunding campaign that is so personal, people invest in you because of you. They believe in you. And so crowdfunding is a really amazing way to also build the audience for your project. And what I did with my crowdfunding was I offered them different things, but I gave everybody a copy of the ebook whenever they supported me. I gave them some free chapters ahead of time and just different things like that. And everybody, I mean, you can make it so personal. And Indiegogo has great, and I think all the crowdfunding platforms do, but they have really great training videos, and they'll walk you through things on how to create a really great campaign. Crowdfunding is a lot of work, but it's a really great way to get the word out and to build an audience around what you're working on doing. And even just making people aware, there's a lot of people probably even listening to this podcast that, people may not even realize that you're writing. And it's kind of, it kind of is to not, when you share something that you're creating, it's actually, you're doing the world a favor, right? You're bringing something beautiful to the world. So why would you be scared to, the world wants to see you succeed. The people that believe in you want to see you succeed and want to see what your creations come out into the world.
Oh yeah, you make it sound so nice. I'm listening to you. I'm sitting and thinking like, how come I never thought about opening a crowdfunding campaign for one of my projects up to now?
Well, and you know what? I did it because I was like, man, I didn't have, quite frankly, I just didn't have the funds to do what I wanted to do with the book in terms of editing and everything. And so that was the only way. And it was such an awesome experience for me personally. It just was so great to connect with people. And it was such a beautiful thing I was so honored and touched by the people who did support me and the amount of support that I got. But so part of that, I think, is definitely from the work that I did in the past. But when I go back through the list of the people, it's actually still the people that supported me were people that were already in that inner circle of my life.
I see. Yeah. So what are your upcoming plans? So I don't know. I mean, did you feel like writing a book is like a drug and you kind of you get hooked and you want to do it more and more? Or, what was your experience with it?
Well, I think I probably speak for everybody listening. It's like, it depends what day and what time of day you ask me whether is it a drug that's helping me or really, since then I did a second book. It went straight to ebook platform, and it's for sale in Amazon and Kindle. But when people sign up for my email list, they can get it for free, and it's about a 10-day journey on how to change the stories you're telling yourself. So it's not a workbook for the book. It draws on some of the book, but it's goes into different places that I didn't touch on in the book.
Okay, so if we go back to that example, I mean, those people can actually get it for free and have a 10-day practical tips of how to do that?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's great.
They can find it right on my website. Yeah.
Okay, so your website once again, so they don't get lost?
yourbrillianceunlimited.com.
yourbrillianceunlimited.com. Great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, I interrupted you.
That's okay. And being in, and I know I've said this in the past, and when I would read that other people would talk about this, I didn't really realize how valuable it would be for me. But I'm in a writers group here, actually, in Dominican Republic, and it's a fun thing because we're actually all from different countries from all over the world, and we live in this funny little microcosm of the world, and we meet every couple weeks. And we give each other feedback, and it's such a beautiful, positive thing. We laid out a couple ground rules for our writers group, and we said, this is what we're going to do, and this is how we support each other. And so we share everything from publishing information and things that we're learning to feedback with each other on our work. That's been super helpful for me because that keeps me moving forward. So I have I have two other books that I'm working on. One is about actually speaking. It's called Inside Out Speaking, and the other one is called Dwell, and it will be coming out at the end of the year. So yeah, I do feel like writing is like a drug, but more than that, I feel like there's just it's a part of who I am, and I just every time I realize that someone picked up my book or they're interested in, I just feel. I feel very humbled by that because it's very amazing to think that these, we have this opportunity as writers and creatives that there's all these things inside of us that are there for a reason, and that they're there for the world. And when we actually begin to come into agreement with those things and say, yes, I want to give you back to the world, now this beautiful synergy happens, and we can help people change the way that they think in so many ways. And I'm like, I focus on nonfiction, but I actually would say that it's almost an equal amount that my life has been touched by fiction and nonfiction when I read, because I just, the power of storytelling. I mean, it's the most ancient form of communication, right? So It's a beautiful gift to bring to the world. And books are very alive and well, and they come in all shapes and forms. And so if anybody listening to the podcast would like to find out, I can give you a resource about how we run our writers group if anybody's looking to start something. We do it in person, but I know I have a lot of different friends that run writers groups online, and they just make Skype dates and they submit and do things. And it really is important to connect up with other people. So I can give some resources there for anybody that may be wondering how they can connect more. In particular, the world of indie authors is a very giving and generous community around the globe, and it's been like a lifesaver for me to find these people.
Yeah, it's true. And I think that, writing itself is a lonely process. So when you kind of mix it up with all these writers groups and the support and the meetings and the feedback, it kind of stops being a completely, isolated and lonely process and becomes kind of, a mixture of being alone when you basically need to focus and produce, but at the same time kind of enjoy this support and enjoy the people around you who kind of, they know what you've been through because they've been doing the same thing too. And I always say, kind of connecting and speaking about writing and showing your writing to writers is a completely different experience from doing it with people who have never written anything and don't really imagine what processes you go through and what struggles are kind of, eating you up.
Yeah, totally. And, it's really, I think we always think that, oh man, people are going to find what's wrong with it. But if you set things up and you, do a couple simple boundaries and everybody's coming to that from a place of mutual respect for each other, wherever they're at, it's amazing. Like every time after we meet and I connect with other writers, I actually feel so strengthened and I feel validated in my projects because it's so good to connect with other people that get that we're all journeying on this together and we all have something to bring and we can honor what each other brings to the table.
Yeah, I see. Well, I've been speaking to many nonfiction authors and they've always brought up the fact that their books have been linked to their businesses and, later on, I even spoke with Peter Shankman recently, and in his interview, he said that the book is the best way to get speaking gigs.
Yes.
And as a speaker, have you seen this effect? How did those books of yours actually affect your speaking business?
Yeah, in a couple ways, actually. Once you, even whether or not you fully feel like it, having a book out actually it's like a calling card, right? That's kind of been the old term that people always said. It's like a book is a calling card for a business. Secondly, what the book does for my speaking engagements is it actually provides another form of income. So I have my books shipped to where I'm speaking, or I have supplies at my place and I take them with me, and it's extra income when I'm out speaking because truthfully, sometimes speaking, when you're trying to get out there, and that's, a whole other conversation for another podcast, but when you're trying to get out there, sometimes you can't find speaking engagements, but reality is you need to make a living, you got to eat. And so having the book and having the opportunity to speak on the topics of the book and then give chances for people to pick up the book after or to, do book signings and everything. It really does help your business a lot.
Yeah, I see. Well, great. And what about the other way around? We always speak about people who have businesses and then they write around those topics to add credibility and to leverage the business and to position themselves as experts. What about the other way around? What if someone wrote a book on a certain subject and wants to become a speaker from scratch? What should be done? Because we always kind of speak about the other end. And what if someone is an author and wants to become a speaker too? Because I guess there are some, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I would say that someone like Brene Brown is probably a really great example of that because she first wrote Daring Greatly, and she only started doing a little bit of speaking, but since the books came out, that's when her speaking took off. And someone like her is a great example to look at because what she did was she disseminated the information from the books and put those into usable chunks of digestible content for people, whether it was that she created courses out of it. It fueled her keynotes when she's out speaking and workshops. So for me personally, that's also what I do. I use the principles that I've highlighted in my books to those become things because truthfully, whatever you're writing about, if it's resonating with an audience, it's stuff that they're going to want to hear and go more into depth in a workshop or a speaking opportunity. And so I've put those into usable chunks for workshops, and they fuel my keynotes, and the points from the book eventually are woven into what I'm speaking about from the stage.
Yeah, I see. Well, I guess we covered quite a lot in here. It was like a high-speed kind of, value-packed interview. So I was just wondering, is there anything we kind of might have forgotten from the essential stuff that newbie writers need to know?
Ooh, no, I don't think so. I think the thing that I found the most encouraging for me, one of the things for me personally, was to get connected with other people. And if you physically can't do that or geographically, get connected online. I surprisingly found Twitter to be actually a really great place. And I know everybody's been talking about Twitter for a long time, but I guess in my mind had been telling myself about a story about Twitter that I would never be able to build relationships and connections. But truthfully, you and I are doing this podcast because of another podcast, and that was a connection through Twitter and yada, yada. So even though there is so much information, the best way is just to start to connect with people. So, I mean, people can connect with you and I first, and I'm sure that you're like me. I love answering questions. I love helping people, resource people, and helping them find ways that they can begin to, whether it's, figure out how to start the journey of publishing or wherever they're at, and just connect with people that are doing what you want to be doing and build relationships with them. That's the best way to start.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, I'm so about relationships and about, real human communication as opposed to SEO and, all these different tricks and tips that, people are using, but which don't really bring in any engagement or any kind of, things like that. So I really think that this is the long-term and fundamental kind of, thing, the relationships which we will be using over and over again, and which will be helping us, a lot. Because I'm just feeling it on my personal experience, when you mentioned that some might not, because of the geography, attend any, meetings, meetups, and writers groups and stuff like that. I mean, I'm relying on everything completely online just because of how far away I am from everywhere. And sometimes I'm doing interviews on a completely crazy 3 and 4 a.m. times because of that. But even a person like me who is so far away from everything and can do this and manages to keep in touch with so many people. So I guess it's completely real. It's very doable, and it's just a matter of how much do you want to do that.
Yeah, exactly. My one of the first people that ever coached me, and he actually trained me at I teach training at the Rainer Institute and coach training. And one of the things he always says is, we look for what we want, but we find what we believe. Yeah. And we can say we want to start, but whether we the proof comes in whatever we believe is possible. And if we really believe that it's possible to do this, then we will find a way to make it happen.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Crystal. Thanks a lot. I'm kind of, I will do my best to retell the stories I'm telling myself, especially the negative ones, because, I have this weakness too, and I tend to kind of, underestimate some stuff about me. So, I'll go through your free book and try to kind of do this 10-day journey and see where it leads me to.
Awesome. So great to talk to you.
Me too. Bye.
Bye.
Well, I hope you enjoyed the interview. As we already mentioned during our talk, please feel free to email us for encouragement and for stating out the new story you will be shaping in your mind. So, before we part, another reminder, Right to Be Read podcast is becoming 1 year old on July 1st. I'm organizing a live hangout, a live Q&A session, and a party where I would really love to see you. So just hop over and register at www.anniealexander.com/birthday. I really hope to meet you there. I'm looking forward to this. It's a really great milestone. I'm very very happy to have you as listeners. And I think you listening to this show right now is one of the biggest achievements of my last year. So basically, before we part, to reinforce Crystal's message, just stop telling yourself the stories that keep you away from success and create the new ones which will make things happen. Take care and have a nice week.